Welcome to Spiritual But, a one-of-a-kind talk show creating a new global conversation about inclusive spirituality. Whether you're religious or not religious, this show seeks to inspire you to discover your own unique spiritual experience. And now, here is your host, award-winning author and actress, Anne Scottlin.
Welcome back to I'm Spiritual But with me, your host, Anne Scottlin. So happy to have you all here today. Thanks for dropping in to join us for a new global conversation about inclusive spirituality. What's on your heart, your mind, your soul. This is a live show, and usually you can leave comments. Today we're pre-recorded with our special guest, so please email your comments and questions in. You can fill out an email form or email me directly by going to www.imspiritualbut.com. So we are so excited today to have a dear friend of my previous co-host, Roger Leslie, who I love so much. And he found a very special guest for us who he loves and has known for quite some time. And her name is Kim Tops, is here to share her story with us and what it takes to be spiritual, what it means to find your way to connection with the divine for her, from her point of view and her experience. So Kim is a Christian influencer, an entrepreneur, and an engineer. This is one smart lady, let me tell you. Her background and experience also includes 25 plus years in engineering and aerospace industries. Wow. Amazing. My dad was an aerospace engineer, so wow. And I was always amazed by what he did. It always blew my mind. And through Kim's personal experiences and successes, she's learned how to turn her pain into purpose. There's so much more, but in order to get started, without further ado, please help me welcome Kim Tops. Hi, Kim. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yay, so happy to have you here. So happy. So as our viewers know, we often start with a quote, and I'm going to see, I think that was in the comments and now it went away once we started recording. So what we're here to talk about today, today's topic is live on purpose. So how do we live on purpose? So what do you mean by that, Kim, when you talk about living on purpose? What's your short answer before we get going?
So my short answer is that life is short. And so you want to be intentional about your purpose. You want to be intentional about who you spend your time with and what you spend your time doing.
Amazing. That's wonderful. Okay, good. So I love that, living on purpose, because that is a piece of spirituality, however one defines it, is living with purpose, living with intention, which is amazing. So Kim, so I know you're a phenomenal person with an amazing career story, and tell us a little bit about your life and just your own personal spiritual journey, your ups, your downs. Share with us some of that.
Sure, I would love to. So for me, I grew up in a home of a Southern Baptist minister and a teacher.
Wow.
So my faith has always been a part of my journey. So I came in with a faith-based family. My challenge was that I grew up in an abusive home. My father was abusive to everyone in our home. And I don't know how to better say that. As a matter of fact, I talk about it a little bit in my very first book that I'm going to publish. But to make a long story short, that was my assignment, is to how to be able to live with that, and then how to be able to forgive and to move on and to heal from that, so that I can live life on purpose.
Amazing.
And so,
that's amazing. And it's interesting that you say that, because just last week, our guest, Jamie Wright from Houston, was on, and the whole episode was actually about I'm spiritual, but and the topic was, this is not okay. Violence and domestic violence within the spiritual conversation, within the spiritual community. And that was literally what we talked about. So this dovetails very nicely in the sense of creating awareness and understanding for people who might be struggling with that, and how do they keep their divine connection when, some of your spiritual leaders are making really egregious mistakes.
Right.
Wow.
And it was a challenge, but I don't take back anything that I went through, because all of that equipped me for who I am today. And so that I am able to talk about it. I am able to share my story and to share my testimony, and how prayer and faith and that ideal of knowing what your purpose is was greater than any pain that I could have ever gone through.
Wow. Amazing. So you grew up in a tough environment, very religious, and also with a lot of stress and anxiety, I'm sure, associated in an abusive situation. How did you hang on to your spirituality, your relationship with the divine during those times?
Right. So ideally, we were like the perfect family looking in. Like my father was one of the richer real estate persons, in addition to having his own ministry. We had the 3 kids, the wife, everything looked good, but it was a different experience on. And so the thing that helped me get through that whole time was just knowing that God had something greater for me than what I was experiencing. And I'm a very authentic person, so I don't like anything fake. And so, and I think that started early on, even as young as age 4, where I could remember praying, and I knew God had a better purpose, and I knew that what I was experiencing was not okay, and it was not. Abuse is never okay. I don't care what form it's in. It's never okay, and it's never okay, even if it's somebody that's close to you or someone that you trust. It is just difficult. And then my biggest challenge once my parents got divorced was learning how to forgive. Like, I never forgot what happened to me, but I was called to forgive. And I carried that pain with me for a long time. And then God was like, look, you need to get yourself together. And I remember reading T.D. Jakes' book, Woman, Thou Art Loose. And it just released me from all of that pain, all of the guilt, all of the shame that came with growing up and having to live 2 separate lives, and just having to be able to forgive and let go of that pain. And so my father and our relationship, he's passed on now, but our relationship probably was the best it had ever been when I learned to let go and to forgive.
Wow. And I think everyone listening can relate to being wronged badly in some form or another. And that challenge to our spiritual experience, which is carrying that resentment, that anger, sometimes a desire to punish those who have hurt us. And forgiveness sometimes seems, I've heard people say, well, if I forgive them, then it's like it didn't happen. And then I feel as if there's no consequences, or there's no, if I forgive, I can't forget. So what would you say to people who are struggling with someone in their life who they know in order to find peace, they would need to forgive?
And that's the second part of it, right? So when you live on purpose, when you spend exuding all of your energy, time, talent, purpose in harboring unforgiveness for someone, you don't have time, you don't have room to do anything else. And so you're not living on purpose. So for someone that has gone through that, and I'm going to tell you, I was mad, right? I was an angry teenager. I didn't even know I was angry until I went off to college. I said, oh, I was really angry. And I really was. And it's not that you don't have those emotions, it's that you don't sin in them. You don't do things that are not productive and are not. And I'm not a person that's vindictive. I don't need to feel like I need to get anybody back, but it hurt. And I wanted him to know how much it hurt. And then for me, it was just having that conversation with him once I got older. And I told him, this hurt and this has affected our family. But my main point that I shared with him is that cycle of generational abuse, because it was a cycle of generational abuse in our family. He abused us because that's what his father did to him. And then at his funeral, I learned that his father's father, and it was just a cycle that continued. And my thing was, my communicating to him was that this cycle of abuse stops here. This is not going no further out of this generation. This is it. It stops here.
So you eventually confronted him about, like, you needed him to see what had happened from someone else's point of view, from your point of view, from the other side.
Right. I don't think he ever understood what the effects of his choices and actions had on us. And I had 2 other siblings, and it all affected us differently. And of course, my mother is actually still living, and it all affected us differently. We all reacted to it differently, but it was her putting us in the counseling sessions, which I did not want to go to as a child. But I needed that. And sometimes you do have your spirituality, you do have your faith, but sometimes you need to go sit on the couch and get all of that out of you, because it just builds up and it builds up. And then you look down and then 10 years are gone, and you're like, well, what happened to that last 10 years? Because you had all of that pain and anger that you were harboring in for that one person or that one incident. Yes, it was life-changing, but it does not give you an excuse not to live life on purpose, not to be who God created you to be, not to be purposeful with your decisions and who do you allow in your life.
Wow, that's really powerful. So how did you know when you had forgiven?
I was at peace. I mean, I can't even explain it to you.
That's a good enough answer, though, because I think sometimes we wonder, right? Sometimes, the people in my life that I've needed to forgive, first sometimes in the past I would hoard those bad feelings because give you a sense,
and it's our human nature, right?
Yeah, right. But eventually, once you forgive, it's not like you kind of just know when you get the peace. Sometimes it's hard to pinpoint like the day it happened. Some people they can, but all of a sudden it's just, to relate to what you're saying, for me, it was not feeling that burning anger anymore, which is where the peace was coming in, knowing that I had a higher purpose, like you said, and knowing that I was bigger and stronger as a human being than those people who had done me harm.
Right.
That I could be the bigger person. Didn't mean I had to accept what they did, but I could move on with my life. Like, if you really want to punish someone, move on with your life and be powerful, successful, and joyful.
Exactly.
It sounds really funny, but you know what I mean? Because when we sit there and stew in our resentment, we're not punishing anyone but ourselves, because rarely are we actually having a confrontation with that person. It's more like that day in and day out toxicity that sits in your throat, your chest, your gut, wherever it feels. You feel that just kind of eating you away. So breaking free is the best medicine.
It really is. And I mean, me and my sister, we both were daddy's girls. Like, we loved and adored our father. We just did not approve of what he did. And even though, until I really got outside of the home, didn't really understand that that was really not wrong. But I knew it, like, in my heart, that, okay, God, this is not how a father-daughter home relationship should look like. And it just was not. So in your Christian paradigm, when your theology is teaching that, God the Father, God is your father, how did that influence? How did your feelings about your earthly father influence your feelings about? Did it have any crossover with, if this person is like this and he's my father, then I wonder what my divine father, is he the same? Did you ever have questions like that? No, I was actually, even at a young age, being able to separate the love of God and love of a heavenly father and the love of my earthly father. And I understood that, we all make mistakes. We all, again, our generation of abuse was generational. So he showed love or thought he was showing love based on what he experienced. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you experience the love of God, then there's just some things that you're just not going to do. And not that he didn't love God or us. I'm not judging anybody. It was just that was his perspective, because that was all that he had been shown.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, that's so fascinating. And I'm really excited to hear that you were able to kind of distinguish those. I think for myself, again, very much a daddy's girl, and fortunate to not be in a physically abusive situation, but psychologically and emotionally very challenging. And I think that what was hardest on me at that time, as a very, very conservative practicing Christian, but really from a much more cult-like environment, was that I really did kind of associate a crossover between a parent, but in this case, a father, and like a God the Father figure. And it was this way. It was that whenever my father was disappointed in me, which sometimes was not legitimate in a greater conversation, like if I'm making my own life choices, then I would feel a spiritual guilt around it, because I kind of felt like his opinion was God's opinion. Now, there's a very different kind of story, but I just share that for those who are watching who have challenging relationships with parents or did as children. Like finding that separation is of a tremendous value, especially if you grew up in an extremely patriarchal environment. So I'm really happy to hear you were able to find that. That's pretty amazing.
Right. And I can't even tell you how I just knew that. I mean, even at 4 years old, I knew that this is not right. This is not how it's supposed to be. And so that instilled in me that when I see something that's not right, I'm not one that's not going to pass by and not say anything. I'm going to stop. I don't care how busy I am. I'm going to stop. I'm going to say anything, because I thought about all of the teachers that I went to school, with, and they may have thought something was going on, but they didn't say anything.
Right.
And so many times we get lost, or we don't do our end of our purpose, because it's tied. My purpose was tied to somebody else's, but because they didn't have the courage to stand up for what was right, or the courage to say something, then I probably stayed in my cycle a little longer than I needed to.
Wow.
So I am always looking for that opportunity, and it is not that I'm looking for it. It's like divine, right? It just drops right there. And then God even tells me, he's like, you're going to walk by, you're not going to say anything. Yes, you are. You're going to report that, right? And a lot of people probably don't like me because of that. And I really do not care.
Good.
Because at the end of the day, I'm doing the right thing, and I'm doing the thing that's tied to my purpose, and making sure that the people around me and the people that God has assigned to me in my journey right now are safe. I can see abuse. You don't even have to say anything to me. I can feel it. Like I know, because I live that. So I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like. The person can have the biggest smile on their face, and I can feel it. I can see it. My spirit feels it. My spirit hurts for them, because I experienced that. So you can't fake that one with me. I know. Like,
no, that's so brilliant. And I relate to that on a certain level, probably to not the same extent, but certain people in my life, who I mentioned last week, a neighbor who was killed by her spouse just a few weeks ago, next door neighbor.
Wow, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And the thing was, they always knew there was an energy. There was a funny energy. Nothing, you never saw anything, you never heard anything, but there was a kind of energy. And it's one of those challenging, when do you step forward and when do you not? And I knew there were a lot of other people in their life who had a better position to advocate.
Right.
And there was a very complex situation as well. But, you always wonder, I wonder if I had done something. And fortunately, there had been interventions before, including, police intervention. So people were aware. But you also have to be willing to be freed from that cycle.
Exactly.
Or you have to be willing to try, or you have to be willing to trust. But it can be so complex when there's kids involved, and you don't want that, if you're the main victim, you don't want that to be moved on to and spread out to the kids. So it's very, very challenging. But what I love what you're saying is how you use all those things that you've experienced. Like you said, it's not like you can't go back and change it, but instead of
Right.
resenting it, you can say, this has created empathy, wisdom,
Exactly.
understanding. And because of that unfortunate circumstances, I now have a gift that allows me to be an advocate for other people.
Exactly.
Whatever a listener's background might be, whoever's watching today, right? Whether any kind of abuse or other situations as well, where you're like, but you can create redemption in the world by being an advocate for the people you understand.
Right.
And you understand, it's unique when you kind of understand both sides.
Right.
Right.
Right. Exactly. And then even in my professional work as an engineer, one of my roles at NASA is to see the train wreck before it happens. Mm-hmm. And so you can be sitting in a room and that is wrong. That design is not going to work. That these people are not going to be safe if you proceed on. And it's the same thing. You sit there and you don't say anything. And that's not who I am. I get paid to say something, and you may not like it, but it's the truth. And then I have to go, as an engineer, go give the data and the research and the things to support why I am saying it. But at least we stop and we take a look, because at the end of the day, you want to go to bed at night and you want to be able to sleep, and you want to have that, not just living on purpose, but you want to have that peace. Mm-hmm. And it's the same correlation, whether it in all of that, having that experience, as a young child from age 4 to 8, and then living the rest of my life, what it does not look like, to have a good village, to be around supportive people, to not be in environments that are toxic. And so for me, even in a work environment, I do not work in toxic work environments. It's time for me to go somewhere else. You just have to know what it is that you're able to accept and you're able to handle. And then once those boundaries are crossed, once you say something, it continues to happen, it's not going to get better. And so it's for me, I have to know what that is walking in. And so I know what that is for me.
That's amazing. Yes. And I think that's such a good point too. Personal empowerment and the elements of spiritual empowerment that support your personal empowerment, right? The elements of knowing you're doing what is right. Now, some people struggle, and I know I used to struggle with this a lot, whereas I would be the first person to come to someone else's defense, but I was the last person to come to my own, or the last person to stir up trouble, if you will, controversy around the way I was treated. Because I was like, well, I can handle this or that, right? This other person, that's not okay. But standing up for yourself, not all of us were able to move into that so directly. So it's a real gift to realize that, God, spirit, the universe, that's all empowering you to move into health and safety and a productive and amazing life, which you clearly have done. So just because I know we're all dying to know. So tell us a little bit about how you got from your environment where you were raised and how you became an engineer, and just what that journey looked like.
So for me, my mother was a science teacher. So, and even though I was in an abusive home, like the expectation of education and influence and then exposure did not stop. And then when once my parents got divorced, we moved to a different state. And I had my aunts and my uncles and my cousins and just this whole village of people. My pastor, I had a new pastor, a youth director, and I just learned how to do things, just so many different things. Like at age 4, I had a brother first, so that's probably part of it. But and I mean, like we literally could repair a TV and a radio at 4 and 5 years old. And I was like, y'all know how to do that? I was like, that's amazing. And so how do you develop? That's a gift. Who taught you how to do that? Like no one. It's just we saw a problem and we fixed it. And so my mother invested in that. And so she would put us in different type of activities, camps and day camps. I had an aunt that was the first Black executive director of the YWCAs. And so she was a trailblazer. And
Wow.
then but she ran this day camp, and they taught us how to do dance and sew and how to act and cook and model. So I became this person that learned how to do all these things. I played an instrument. I still play an instrument. I can sing. I can dance. I taught dance. I took dance. I mean, people's like, how do you know how to do all of these things? And so it was exposure, being a part of the youth ministry and that they had at my church, and having amazing youth leaders, and then having that opportunity, to just amazing teachers. Dr. Leslie was one of my teachers that made sure that, okay, I knew how to write. The average engineer cannot write.
Wow.
They cannot. I mean, they just can't. I proof a lot of my managers' materials and bosses' materials, and rewrite technical documents and put together presentations. And that's because of the things that I learned, and learning how to be versatile, but also learning how to pivot and make changes when needed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So then after doing all that thing, so I always knew, like at age 4, I was going to be an engineer. And so I just was exposed to that. And then I had the Star Trek, the Jetsons, and all these different things that opened up my creativity. And then I had a mother that, she was like, okay, well, what is it you want to make? What is it you want to create? And she bowed into that. And I remember I attended Galena Park High School, and I remember they had a electronics course, and I was the only female that took this course. And I said, that's okay. I'm gonna still take the course, because I know that I'm going into a male dominated field. How do I make that transition? So I was trying to decide what type of engineer that I wanted to be, because I knew I was good with electrical. I was good with computers, and I always wanted to work at NASA. So I was like, well, how do I make that transition? And then I had the opportunity to apply for the Naval Academy, the Air Force Academy. I even got accepted into the Naval Academy and decided not to go, because we were in the Gulf War. And I just didn't think I could kill anybody. I just didn't think I could do it. And so I ended up going off to Lamar University in Beaumont, Texas. And I at the time, I had majored in electrical engineering and computer science. I was accepted into every college that I applied, every program that I applied for, which was a wonderful opportunity, because then I was trying to figure out how I'm going to pay for this, right? And so I was also athletic as well. And so I was actually going to Texas Tech 3 days before I got ready to leave. I got a call from Lamar University, in which I had applied there too, because they had a good engineering program. But they saw me run at the state meet, and they offered me a scholarship. And so I changed everything like in 3 days, and I ended up going to Lamar University, and that's where I started. I stayed there for right about 3 years, and then I got tired of running, and then I transferred to the University of Houston, and I finished my electrical engineering degree at the University of Houston.
Wow. What an exciting journey. A very hard work, I'm sure.
Yes.
And yet also so exciting. So yeah, so you're there in Houston, and NASA was very local.
Yes.
That is really amazing. And I think that's also one of the opportunities we all have, is really to live by example, right? So when you've overcome whatever our viewers' life challenges, whether it's abuse, whether it's so many things, addiction, so many things, when you come out the other side, I've seen people who just kind of continue to live a broken, very recessed life. They kind of just go in and stay there. But you have an opportunity to really live and thrive, instead of focusing on shame, focusing on living by example.
Right. And my pastor, I just wanted, because I know so many viewers struggle with shame. And my pastor always says, shame, guilt, and shame are wasted emotions. They really are. They don't add any purpose. They don't add any value. They don't give you any more time. I mean, it's just you're just wallowing in that. And there's no progression. There's no action. There's no step forward. And so sometimes yes, they did that. Yes, they did that. You own that, right? That doesn't change that, but you have to, go get over that, and not even necessarily get over it, but you just got to let it go, and to find that peace, and to find that thing that stirs you up, that makes you get up in the morning and, okay, that's my passion. That's what I'm going to go do. That's how I'm going to live. And that's how I'm going to move forward. You have to decide that. Nobody can decide that for you. You have to decide when enough is enough, and when you're going to live life on purpose and to move forward.
I love that so much. Wow. Okay. So I'm writing this down for my own because I love it so much. Guilt and shame are wasted emotions. Wow. So powerful. And they are so, they can be so addicting.
Yes, yes. Because you would think, well, this happened to me. Okay, now I'm gonna spend the next year thinking about what didn't happen. When you miss those opportunities, you miss those things. I had the amazing opportunity, like last week, I went to 4 funerals in 6 days.
Wow.
I'm like, that is overwhelming. But these people had amazing lives. They had amazing opportunities, and where they could to step in and encourage and motivate people to get to their next best place. They did that. But you don't know what your time is. And so you have to you just gotta let it go. I'm sorry, you just gotta let it go.
It's so true. And it's like, so the next question would be, if people would be asking, is how? It's like, I have guilt and shame. I want to forgive. I want to let go of guilt and shame. How? Because it seems like such a great idea and something I'd be willing to do. But how? So what kind of advice could you give them?
Yeah, so it's back to what I was just saying. You own what happens, right? You own what makes you feel that way. And you have those emotions. And what we don't want to do, we don't want to make mistakes, or we don't want to halt our life or get stuck because we're stuck in our feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And your feelings will get you stuck. People are, we live in a generation, people are not kind. They're just not. And so you can just say, okay, well, that person was mean to me, and so I'm not going to show up for work today. No, your purpose is greater than that. There's a child watching you. And so I was always inspired by the people that were around me. The reason why I chose electrical, my neighbor across the street was an electrician. He took time out of his day. He said, well, why don't you shadow me, and come see what this looks like. I didn't meet my first engineer until I was in college. So my thing is for me to do is to make sure that people see a female engineer. They see an African-American woman engineer. They see a girl doing STEM. And so that's just creating those opportunities, but they're there. But I can say like, okay, I'm not going to do that today because, one of the guys on the team, he hurt my feelings and I'm not going back. No, yes, you own what happens. They have guidelines, HR guidelines, employment laws, all kinds of things to help you to protect you. But then you have to decide in yourself, again, knowing what your boundaries are, knowing what's acceptable to you and what's not. And you need to identify those going in, write it down. The emotions that you're experiencing, the things that you're having trouble with, write those down. Do not forget, we all have employment assistant programs and opportunities where we can to just get counseling and get that help that you need. Because I'm going to tell you, I probably wouldn't be sitting here in front of you today if God had not put it on my mother's heart. She was like, okay, these kids need to talk about this abuse, and they need to figure out how this is just a comma. It's not a period. It's just a comma in their lives, and so that they can move forward and be all that they are created to be. And so that's a part of it as well, getting the help that you need. But a lot of us, we don't even know that we need help. We don't know that we're stuck. We don't know that the guilt and the shame has consumed our lives. It has consumed our days. We follow and we're connecting and swiping all the people that we don't like. And we're not doing the things that we're supposed to be doing. So it's because you're stuck. You have that list and you're like, oh, well, I'm just a procrastinator. No, you're stuck for a reason. You have to identify what is the root cause, the thing that is keeping you from not moving forward. And then once you are able to establish and identify what that is, then you can ask for divine help and strategy to move forward. But you have to identify as a person, what is it that's keeping me feeling this way? Is it my emotions? Are my emotions out of whack? Is it something that happened to me that I was 8? And that's really what's the problem is with my emotions now that I'm 30 or 40. It's something that I happen with when I'm a child. And I know this for a fact. Every counseling session you go to, they're going to ask you, tell me about your childhood journey. Because 9 times out of 10, it's something that happened then when you were 8 or 9 years old, when you're a little girl, a little boy, that you just, and it may revisit itself, and you may have to go back and sit on the couch again and get that out of you. But know that you can do it. And that's all I want to communicate, is that you can do it. You can get over, you can let it go, you can forgive, you can remove those wasted emotions of guilt and shame, so that you can get back on track and live life on purpose.
Wow. Live life on purpose. That's so beautiful. Wow, Kim, thank you so much. I'm so inspired. I wish we had a whole another hour to
yeah. Well, you can invite me back anytime.
Okay, we will talk again. But let's just quickly, I know you're in the process of writing a book. Just give us a quick summary of what that's going to be about.
Yes. So the title of my book is Purpose, Peace, and Progress: How Success Through Action Can Create Better Results. And so with this, I use the acronym STAR. And so that you can be the star of your own life, right? So it doesn't matter what you've gone through. And people always ask me, like, how do you do all of these things? And then when I tell them I had all of the emotional stuff that I had to deal with, they was like, we don't even understand how you just dealt with that and be able to do that. So I kind of talk about it in the book, in general, in purposes. But then I kind of show you how to walk through journal prompts and how to walk through. And so I kept going back and forth, because I know scripture, because that's what I grew up in. But I wanted this book to be able to relate across different religions, across different people, and allow them the opportunity to really look at their life and to see how they can be a star where they are right now. So it doesn't matter what you've been through, where you're going, who is with you, and understanding that we're in this journey together. And that you don't have to stay stuck. You don't have to stay, just overwhelmed with emotions and overwhelmed with guilt and walking in life, not being able to forgive. You don't have to stay that way. You can move out of that and journey through success through other ways. And so I give you some techniques and some strategies, but I also give you the opportunity to look at your own life and reflect back in. What is it that I need to do differently? Don't just read a book and not have a call to action or a plan to move out of it. How can I make my life better so that I can empower someone else and share my life testimony with others?
I love that. Wow. So for all our viewers and listeners, keep your eyes open for Kim Topp's book. And the first three words again were of the title?
Purpose, Peace, and Progress.
That's right. Purpose, Peace, and Progress, the 3 Ps. So yes, keep that in mind, because what an amazing opportunity we've had to talk to Kim today and hear her life story. Live on purpose, lead by example. And if you're stuck, she's going to have a book soon that can also help you get unstuck. So, well, I just want to thank you so much for being here today, Kim. It's been so wonderful having you.
Thank you. And I said, I'm just an honor to be here, but even to listen and communicate and to hear how, we've met each other for the first time today, but to even hear how our stories interconnect and how you're even able to relate to what I've gone through and how to keep progressing on. So I appreciate this opportunity.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes. Well, and we are so happy to have had you here. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. Live your life on purpose. And please do like and subscribe to the show here on USA Global Television and Radio, if you would. If you have any questions for us, or you have any speakers you'd like to recommend, you can go to imspiritualbut.com. Every week we're live here on Wednesdays at noon Eastern and 9 a.m. Pacific. So join us again then next week. Thank you so much. And thank you, Kim. Live your life on purpose, everybody.
That's right. Thank you.